This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Bill Barnett. He's an entertainment CEO and founder of the Smarter Minds Network. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine. Good to be with you.
So, one of the things we like to ask any guest before we get into the heart of your story is why do you do what you do, and what motivates you?
Yeah, good question. I'll give you a few things that motivate me, but the real thing, if you want the real thing that motivates me, it's my family. I have twin daughters and I have a wife. And so if I had to give you one real motivation for my life, that's what it would be. It would be my family. But after that, a few things. One is I love, and it started with my kids as they grew up, as I mentored them through life, is helping others succeed. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. It means a lot to me. The other is creating connections. My friends all know when they need somebody, I'm usually their first call. And they said, Bill, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that. Who do you have that can help me? And I'm pretty good at that. And then the third thing, which is always a thing of mine, and it's been recreated through many of my companies, is making complicated things simple. I just don't have patience for things that are complicated. I don't have a long attention span, and if something cannot be done quickly and simply, I probably won't do it. And so whenever I'm creating something, I always want to make it as simple to use as possible. So those would be my motivating factors in life.
That's interesting. So you've always wanted to, help people simplify things or make it like the straight path, the
Yes.
quickest play instead of going zigzag. And in my world, I'm a creative person, but also I do software engineering. And sometimes people have these really complex algorithms or
Needs.
things they want to do,
Right.
and it's like shows who's the genius in the room, but it's actually the best approach, like you're
Right.
saying. It's like just to show us that you're a rocket scientist doesn't mean that it actually is the right solution.
Right. Actually, along those lines, one of my most recent companies, a couple of companies ago, was a platform for kids all over the world to be able to submit interviews for colleges that they couldn't afford to fly to. And when we were creating it, my CTO said, "Well, let's do this and let's do this." And I said, "Listen, you're thinking about you making it as great as possible so you can sign your name on it. Don't think about you. Think about the customer. What is
Mhm.
the easiest thing for the customer to use? Because the easier it is for him to use or her to use, the more they'll use it. So I'm all about simplicity."
Yeah, making like user interfaces so you don't have to have like a degree from Carnegie Mellon to use it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Mhm.
It's not. It's probably like, boy, that's the way you think it should be, but the average person's never going to touch that.
Right. That's
So
it.
it's like it's make it intuitive, make it simple. That's like when Apple came up with like their user interface.
Right.
Back in the day, it's like, hey, what's a mouse? It's like,
Right.
yeah, like a mouse is a quicker way to get to it than all these shortcuts. So you had to
That's
memorize all
exactly
the
right. That's
shortcuts.
it. You've been in my shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I do UI design. I'm a BSA, business
Right.
system analyst. That's my day job. But it seems like you had a lot of hats. You've been in television, film, radio, digital technologies. I'm really interested in some of the entertainment stuff you were into because I'm a creative person. I'm a part of my world.
Mhm.
Um, so what did you find in the entertainment industry that maybe you can tell a story that you think would the audience would resonate with?
Well, I have a few. I have some interesting, sexy stories. One of the companies that I had a radio production company with a partner, and we produced a lot of radio shows, and we syndicated them nationally. And I get a call one day from a gentleman, and he says, I represent a large record company, and we're very interested in buying a radio syndication company to syndicate some of our record labels and to make more out of some of our artists and record labels." So we negotiated. We finally put a deal together. The person that put that deal together was a guy named by the name of Bob Kardashian. I'm sure you've
Oh,
heard of the
yeah,
Kardashians.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Bob, the father who had passed away, was the one that put that together. And we had a lot of interesting stories about that. We did a show with the now infamous O.J. Simpson called Breakfast with O.J. We did a show with Al Michaels called Al Michaels on Sports. We had country shows. We had a lot of different shows. But interesting about that, which relates to my backstory, all about connecting, is that I was a fairly good tennis player. I was a walk-on at USC, and I played some satellite tournaments. I was a pretty good tennis player. And Irving Azoff, who was the head of the music division for MCA Records, who has gone on for many other big things, he's a very famous person in the industry, was a huge tennis player. And we kind of sealed the deal over us playing tennis one day. And he had big tennis events at his house every weekend. And he had a bunch of athletes, a bunch of celebrities, and a bunch of pros. And so I knew a lot of the pros because we grew up playing together. So we had great 4 and 5 hour weekends at his house usually on Sunday morning. So my social life melted with my business life.
But that's the Rolodex, approach versus like, the modern LinkedIn approach. Like I've got my latest gig based on just going through my Rolodex and seeing, somebody I worked with. I called like a CEO of a startup and say, hey, do you have, we worked together 3 years ago. Do you have any work? Yeah. And boom, I got that job, and now I was made permanent on that. And, it was more successful than a lot of these algorithms.
I got to tell you, there's a huge difference between a contact and a connection.
Yeah.
And I teach all of the people that I mentor and that I that sign up for my consultancy that it's all about the connection. There's I have 5,000 or 6,000 contacts on my LinkedIn. I probably have connections with 200 of them.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's about connection.
Yeah. If there's somebody that can remember that and you have a conversation you keep in touch with, that like if you say something, they'll actually listen. And if they say something to you, you listen.
Right.
It's like then you actually, it's not just just something like, hey, hi, bye, how's the weather? They actually will listen to what you have to say.
And one other little hint that I always give my people that sign up for my courses is that the key to that is showing the interest in the other person. Not always talking about what you're doing, about your accolades or anything. It's finding out and really truly being interested in the other person. Mm-hmm. And people like to talk about themselves, and I always put myself in that position. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me about your work. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about what's going on in your life. You form a bond with people that way. When you care about other people, you form that bond, and that's kind of my MO. That's how I work.
I think it's like over time doing this podcast, I've talked to like over 1,000 people, and I would say like the lesson learned compared to my first early podcast is I think I have better listening skills now.
And that's what makes you a successful person.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize is like people talk past each other, or they're in the conversations anticipating what their response is going to be, rather than listening to what the other person is saying.
You are 100% right. You can tell when somebody's thinking about what they want to say before you're even done talking. And I tell people I'm around, give conversation space. Let the other person finish. Give it a second to resonate. Even if you already know what you want to say, give it a second to breathe. And I've listened to you on several of your shows, and you are really good at that. You listen to the people you're talking to. You take it in, and you manage to form great conversation around what the other person is saying. You're really good at that.
What I try to do is I don't over prepare, right? A lot of what I do is if I kind of treat it like a jazz fusion concert, right? Or so I got a structure of what I do,
right?
But I'm not totally tied to it, right?
Yeah.
So I can kind of go wherever it's going to go. So if it's a note I didn't expect, I'm not going to freak out because I'm looking to run a script. I'm looking to actually, if I hear something, I'm going to dive into it, maybe go down a rabbit hole, but I don't have to be going like I have to A to Z in that order. That's not my thing. That's not how I do it.
So you know how to pivot.
Yeah, I try to.
That's the key. You know how to pivot. And whenever I'm talking to young people about interviewing, I always tell them to make sure you listen to what the other person is saying. Don't come in with a preamble, with a script. React to what they're saying. Always be able to pivot. And that's exactly what you just explained.
Yeah, if you go to the career fair and you're running your elevator pitch
Right.
over and over, everybody's going to say, well, who's this guy? Right. Compared to somebody who can kind of off the cuff listen to people and then react with something that's appropriate to what they've heard.
Exactly right. You hit it on the head.
But yeah, it's just like, a difference, with it, like a classical musician, they're like tied to the page.
Right.
Where
Right.
jazz or experimental musicians, like, if I hear a note, I'll go wherever it goes.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
And it's a different philosophy. Like you don't have to be, you don't have to know. It's like kind of live in the unknown. Like I love the unfound sound or
Right.
the unknown thing. I'm not scared of it.
Right.
Some people are scared of that unknown thing. They want to have the known thing. Like
I tell people to embrace that. Embrace what's not known because it's fun, it's exciting, it's new. And when I tell people about going in for interviews, one of the first things I say, other than obviously doing all your research on whoever you're interviewing with, is pay attention to, if you're walking into an office, what's in the office? Did the person, is he a tennis player? Like I'm a tennis player. Does he travel a lot? Does he, any number of things, and bring that up because that's obviously impromptu. And it makes a much more relaxed conversation as opposed to an interview, which I always try to get my people to do.
Yeah, because if you're like you're saying, like you're having these tennis tournaments, right? Or if you do something like, well, if you go somewhere saying I'm going to do X,
right?
Sometimes it's better to actually go to something that is not about your direct goal, where you do something kind of indirect.
I feel that's the better way to do it because when you're going in and I have a lot of people that are interviewing, they say, oh my gosh, I've got 9 or 10 other people that are interviewing for the job. I said, don't interview. Turn it into a conversation. Go in there, ask them questions, lighten the load of a tension-filled interview or a preset cookie cutter interview. Bring up something different, talk about something, make a joke, make a comment about something unrelated to the job, and it brings it to a whole different level. I think that's one of the most important things people can do is disarm your interviewer, disarm the person you're talking to, make it friendly, make it conversational.
Yeah, if you can tell your story, like if you can find a way to weave your story in, but also make that story resonate with what the interview, like the HR person's there,
right?
And listen to them, like try to listen to them first before you do, so you can pick up some clues. So when you tell your story has elements that they just told you about, right? And then you hit them.
All right, so Phantom, you're hired.
That's kind of like, I don't know. It's so hard today because you get people like my story is like, I am a political science and sociology major and I got into IT and I don't have a comp sci degree at all. How did I get into IT? Because I went to an insurance company when I got out of Bowdoin and I said, I'm not an IT guy, but I know how to do research. I know how to learn. And I hear that you have an issue where your programmers can't talk to your C-suite people, and the C-suite people can't talk to the programmers. You need an in-between guy that can actually translate. I think a liberal arts major can do that because I can listen to what you say and I can translate both sides.
Yeah,
I can interpret.
You got it.
I made the job happen where I wouldn't have got the job based on my qualifications. I think that's what people are messing up on LinkedIn,
right?
Because they look. And then you guys say, oh, you got to have this certification. You got to have this acronym. You got 5 years of this. And immediately you're like, oh, you can't do it. But if you can actually talk to that person at a career fair and tell your story after you listen to something they've told you,
right,
you're probably going to get that job.
You're absolutely right.
It's like the LinkedIn is like, it's more like you want to turn it into Instagram. It's like, I don't know. If I want to be on Instagram, I'll stay on Instagram.
Right.
I don't know if that's what it's for, but in terms of you're building sustainable success, is like what's your story about that?
Yeah, so I am I've had several iterations in my career. I've been person that's gone from, I don't want to say from job to job, but from opportunity to opportunity. Mostly they've been my own businesses. And the one of the best examples I can give you is when the aforementioned Like Live company that I had, where we had interviews for kids all over the world. I knew that there was a need for that because my kids were going off to college and they had a very difficult time getting interviews because either it was geographically undesirable, it was hard to get there in a 24 or 48 hour period, or in most cases, kids couldn't afford to fly to these colleges. So I had this idea. Was I able to accomplish this by myself? Are you kidding? I would have had no shot to do this by myself. But I called 3 people that I knew that I needed. One was somebody that was a college counselor, so she could get direct feedback from her clients, from her friends, on whether this was a good idea. The second was an IT person. I called my personal IT person. He put together a program for us, which was absolutely terrific. And then I needed one more person. I needed a finance person. I needed somebody to handle the books. We got together, the 4 of us. We formed our company. They each got a very generous share of the company, and we put this together. The way I was able to have a scalable career is because I always had people that were smarter than me that were driving the ship. I knew how to manage it. I knew how to raise money. I knew how to sell it, but I didn't know the back end of a lot of things. So I created companies, all of my companies, with people that were all smarter than me.
You gotta know your limitations.
Yeah.
But you know what you don't know.
That's exactly right. But I always knew that I didn't know what I needed to know. I knew that. That was a given. And I call it my personal board of directors. I have, again, that's why people call me for who I should call. I've got a personal board of directors that is vast. And I can tell you, if you needed somebody, I could probably find somebody for you within 24 hours, because that's what I've spent my life doing, is putting together people in all areas of my life that were more experienced than me, more involved in certain areas than I was, that all had better knowledge in the areas that I knew eventually I wanted to get into.
It's like a good manager, a good entrepreneur knows like what they don't know. Why you have Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak.
Right.
Wozniak, he was in the garage building the stuff.
Yep.
Because he's the guy who's going to do that.
I have that in my book, and I talk about all these famous people, but the people that were behind them that really made it successful.
Yeah. There's even more. Yeah, there's more than what that's got the people But yeah, it's like building the band together. Like if you think about Zeppelin.
Right.
And Jimmy Page, he was a studio wizard, and he went and built that band by grabbing people that he knew that if we put them in the same room, they were going to make the kind of magic that Zeppelin did, because he just went and architected that whole thing.
Right.
And that's what you got to do if you want to.
A lot of famous artists. A lot of famous artists have made it because of the other person that is not as well known as they are.
Yep. So yeah, you just bring it. You got to pull the right people into the room.
Right.
Whether it's the recording engineer or the producer or the sound engineer, the right folks on the team, they can turn it into that magic. And sometimes it's people that people don't know.
Yeah. So just to follow up on your question, a few other things that I think are very important to have a scalable career is I encourage people strongly to focus on their strengths, not necessarily their passions. I've had a lot of my friends that have had long careers. Some of them started with their passions. They wanted to write, they wanted to be in music, and they kind of went in and out of careers, up and down. But the people that I know that focus on what they were really good at, those are the people that have long, strong careers. And so I always encourage that. And then the other thing is that I believe that you want to build on what not just on what you do best, but on what the environment around you is asking for. Like Live is another great example of that. I felt like there was a need for this. And so I jumped on it, and I had good people around me. So it's kind of to go where the opportunity is. When my kids were looking for jobs and we talked about different things, I said, go where the opportunity is. Is it a good company? Is it a building block for your career? Is it in something that you want to pursue? So go where the opportunity is.
Yeah, you have to go, you have to read the tea leaves.
Yep.
And kind of understand, like the market, but you also got to understand, what do you want?
Yeah.
because you don't want to be phoning it in. Like not that you don't, follow your passion, but you like what you're good at is
Mhm.
probably something you're happy to get up in the morning and do.
Most likely, yes. If you're not good at something, you're not going to want to do it.
You're not gonna
But
be
people that are
excited.
good at something, they want to get up. They want to
Yeah,
get to work. They want to start conquering whatever that next hill is or mountain is.
when they're not watching the clock saying it's 5 o'clock, I can
Right.
drop. They're the
That's right.
person that's gonna stay and get it done. In the startup, the person that's gonna be there, right? That's on the floor doing it,
Yep.
solving the problem solver. And this is the kind of age where, with AI and robotics and automation and globalization, there's a lot of stuff you can do between
Mhm.
having a 3D printer and AI bots and everything. You can scale things
Mhm.
that is like before you would need like 100 people to do something,
Right.
and now you can do something with like 3, 4, 5 people.
That's right. Oh,
Um,
the world is changing, that's for sure. And people have to find their niche. They have to find out where they fit in to this new formula of the world. You're absolutely right about that.
yeah, but a lot of people are so scared of the
Mhm.
tech. And like I said, the one thing I learned is in tech, you have to be willing to kind of reinvent yourself all the time. I
Right.
started on mainframes. Now we're in blockchain AI age.
Mhm.
I
That's right.
couldn't stay on COBOL. I couldn't stay on mainframe. Not that I don't have that in my wheelhouse, and
Mhm.
I do work on things where I need to, but you have to be willing to go into places where you dip your toe in and you're not going to drown,
Right.
but you do have to evolve.
That's right. That's right. You always have to be evolving. That goes back to your earlier question about a sustainable career. That you always have to be evolving, and the only way really to evolve is by having the right people around you. I cannot tell you on my Smarter Minds right now. I have a lot of social media. Do you think I do that? Absolutely not. I have somebody that works for me. She's in her early 30s. She's absolutely terrific. I've got 2 daughters who also work at big companies. When I need something, I'm not being proud and saying, "Oh, I can do this and I can do that." Are you kidding me? I wash my hands of it and say, "What's the best way to do it?" And they
Yep.
give me the answer literally in 5 minutes.
I think it's being honest with yourself about your limitation makes it so you're not going to have that blind spot
Right.
where, like, I think if you think you know everything
Yeah.
or you think you can handle things that you really can't,
Right.
then when you hit the wall, it's like it's a big shock
Well,
because
let me tell you
you're not being
something.
honest.
Facing your liabilities or owning up to your liabilities is liberating.
Yeah.
It opened up a world. When that hit me in my my mid to late 30s, after I had sold my first company to Bob Kardashian, Irving Azoff, and I was on top of the world. I sold it when I was 28. I was there till I was about 33 or 34. I was literally on top of the world. A young guy. I had a nice house. I had a nice car. And then when they decided to disband the unit for one reason or another, unrelated to us, I was like, well now what do I do? And I was shot back down, and I had to build myself back up again. So once you realize that you're not the top dog, that you're not the smartest, that you're not the best, and to embrace other people, it's liberating. It's like a big cloud lifts over you, and that was one of the big changes in my life.
I think it's important to kind of realize that things go up and down. Like
Right.
some people want to be on this, like always climbing, but
Mhm.
the essence of creativity is like you learn from mistakes.
Right.
And if you expect that you're never going to make a mistake, it's like you're not really
Right.
living in reality.
Let me tell you something. You can ask any successful person you know, and I know you've had a lot on your show, any of them. If any of them said that they have not had some falls along the way, some bad breaks along, they're lying.
Yeah, not telling the
They're,
right.
they're
Well, they
not
want,
telling you the truth.
yeah, they want to pretty it up a little bit and put the
Right.
lipstick in. But
Right.
yeah, it's just the problem is it's just ego, like
Mhm.
ego in your outward image, and people have these faces or these masks they put on, but it's about safety. I
Right.
think there's a lot of people that they to be safe, they'll tell a story that's not exactly true,
Right.
because it makes them feel like they've got this wall around them.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like if you got a lot of those walls, eventually they're gonna come back on you. They're gonna keep things from happening.
You know what's interesting about that? Some of the most successful people that I know and friends of mine, when we get together, we don't, we'll talk about business. We'll talk about some good things that are happening. But when they're talking, when we're getting into a real honest talk, you know what we talk about? We talk about our failures. We talk about what went wrong. And it's very disarming when you're talking to somebody that you know is successful and they're telling you about some of the failures they've had. And they're able to be honest about it. They're able to be upfront about it. It is such a great feeling to know that, gosh, here's somebody that's doing so well. That's you got the biggest house on top of the hill, but all the failures, all the things that he or she have gone through to get there. And it says, you know what? Anybody can do it. If they've been down at the bottom and made it, you can too.
Well, that's like the commonality of the whole process of creation is that you break some eggs to make a cake. I mean, that's just what it is. If you're a songwriter, how many things are on the floor? Like how many scraps are on the floor? Like I'm in my room right now in the middle of tons of demos, and I don't know which one I want to go with. But the idea is like you throw stuff at the wall and then you walk away, come back, you have other people check it out. You have no idea a lot of times what's going to work. But you keep it open enough that you know that sometimes it's like Zappa used to go in a room and have tapes from live shows and places all over the place and start just mixing and matching things around. People ask him about his process. So, well, I can't think linear. I'm going to have to move things around. And I've talked to a lot of creative people, authors, a lot of people that they don't think necessarily linear in a linear fashion. They kind of bounce around.
Right.
And that seems to kind of really trigger a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, let me tell you something about those failures and all the papers that you've got laying around on your floor and everything. All of those papers are going to lead you to your next success. A lot of people ask me, gosh, you've had a few failures. You've had a good career, though. What would you do differently? And you know what I would say? Nothing. Because all those failures I had led me to some of the successes that I had. There's not a lot I would change. I wouldn't marry a different woman. I've been married to her for 42 years. I love my kids to death. They're the greatest kids in the world. Everything that I did, the ups and the downs, all led me to where I am today. So even though you may have a step back here or there, it usually leads to 2 steps forward. And that's how I look at it.
Kind of a Buddhist way. I'm a Buddhist, but believe there's like a plan, whether you want to believe that or not. But the idea, and in that plan is like the way things happen, and it's going to go up and down. And when things go wrong, it's like, well, that's not actually wrong.
Right.
That actually sets you up for this.
It happened for a reason.
Yeah. There's like different things happen and you might not understand it when you're in it.
Right.
But when
and the other thing is you can't cry over spilled milk. If something bad happens, it happened. And you know, a lot of people ask me, what's one of the best things you look for in an executive or people that you're hiring? And it's resiliency. We're all going to fall down. Even if you're the most successful, you're going to fall down. The question is, how quickly can you get back up? Get back up. That's the most important thing. Resiliency is one of the most important qualities in a successful person.
Yeah, like if you're the musician, right, and somebody hits a perceived bad note, the person that can, recover from that without you even knowing that it was a mistake.
Yep.
Those are the guys you want around. Like
that, absolutely, 100%.
The guy that says you got to start from the beginning.
Right.
Nobody really wants to have him around. It's like the guys who can kind of deal with it when they're in that moment, and you didn't even perceive there was a problem. Yeah. That's like, because like what happens is there's no bad note. There's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. That's an opportunity to evolve the piece.
That's it.
If you're in that mindset, you're not thinking you failed. You're thinking that you're on the road to success. It's a totally different mindset.
Yep, you're absolutely right. It's never it's not something bad that happened. It's an opportunity to make something better, and that's what it is.
That's like what a lot of the agile or iterative development people do today, where everything used to be waterfall. Right now you can move, and if you notice on your phone, every night your apps are being updated. It's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. We're living in this idea where like it's never really done, because whatever we didn't know as programmers and analysts, we make an update for the thing that we didn't know. So every day the program gets better, because like what we didn't know yesterday we fixed today. And
Right.
what we don't know about tomorrow, we'll fix later.
By the way, that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. You're relating it to your business. I relate it to my business, but that's life. You know, your kids take a fall. They're going to get back and make it better tomorrow. Something in your personal life happens. You make a mistake. You change it. Everything gets better in time.
Yeah. So you don't have to like be holding on to like being into resentment for what happened. Like if you hold on to the past, it doesn't really help your future.
Right.
You know, if you learn from your past, it's a different thing.
That's right.
So it's the mindset that actually has lessons learned and can be honest about the lessons learned. Then you're gonna make some forward progress.
Right. That's it. You got it.
But it can in today's market, like we were talking about, like the algorithm. Like people get frustrated. They go on one of these job sites and there's like 500 people trying to get the same job. And then like I was talking to some people on the podcast a couple of days ago, and it's really coming back to like this Rolodex idea of your personal connections who
Board
are
of
really,
directors. Yeah.
connectors. That are really people that can help you, but you gotta be willing to talk to them.
Right. So I've got a lot of stories about that. I am a friendly kind of person, and I talk to everybody everywhere. A lot of people only talk to people in the C-suite. I literally talk to everybody everywhere. And my wife is an event coordinator. She does big events. And one night we were out with a couple of other couples at a nice restaurant in Los Angeles, and we had a waitress who could not have been friendlier. She was sweet. She had a great personality. She joked around with us, the whole thing. And I said, okay, I know you're a waitress, but you've got an incredible personality. I know we're in LA. I know you probably do something else. She said, oh, yes, I'm a photographer as well. I said, you're kidding me. My wife is a big event producer. I want to introduce the two of you. Okay, full throttle. Let's go 30 years later. She has been my wife's leading photographer for the last 30 years. And she has been she was the photographer at both my daughter's weddings.
Wow.
So I have a bunch of stories like that, but that's a perfect story about you never know who you're going to meet. I teach a class. One of the chapters in my book actually is called Every Day is an Interview. And literally, I am excited every day about who I'm going to meet. Am I going to meet somebody at the market? Am I going to meet somebody at the bank? Am I going to meet somebody at a meeting? You never know who you're going to meet. And I embrace every person that I meet because you never know where it's going to lead.
That is a very progressive mindset, because a lot of times people are so fearful of the people they're going to meet, or they're in judgment of the people they're going to meet, and they don't have the outlook that you just mentioned, because like either competitive, or they're prejudging, or they don't want to embrace anything new or different or interesting. Where if you're in a more of a discovery, like you want to go out like Jack Kerouac and go on the road, and experience life, you have a different outlook. It's like, let's go to Japan and stay there for 2 years, and I don't know how to speak the language. Well, like, why? Well, how could I do that? I don't. Well, you just do it.
Right. You know the easiest way to start that off, the easiest thing to do? Start off with a smile. When I see people that are smiling, whether I'm driving in a car sideways from them or I'm walking down the street, that's the quickest way to open a door, is with a smile. There's so many. I walk every morning. That's part of my routine. I walk 4 miles every morning, and I see a lot of the same people on my walks. I walk in 3 or 4 different areas, and I certain people, we have a little connection because we always smile at each other. We'll wave every once in a while. We'll have a little conversation. But if you smile, it means that you're open to meeting people. You're friendly. You're open, and just all you have to do is start it off with a smile. And that kind of is my first door opener.
That's a difference. It's more like, I don't know, like my father was a salesman, right, for insurance. And he had to get out there and find new people all the time. It's kind of his wheelhouse. But he did have a Rolodex of like families and people that got married. People had kids, so he would build up within a family all those connections, and then find other connections and keep on finding connections. Just build. And because he was a salesman, I kind of didn't want to deal with that. I say, why does he deal with all these strangers all the time? And then now as I got older, it's like, my dad had a talent for communication, and being a people person. because
Right.
he could just like everybody in town knew who he was.
Yeah. Which
You know,
I think is the greatest asset somebody can have. His ability to connect with people. Because at the end of the day, it's not how much money you've made, it's how you have connected with people. And to me, that's the single greatest asset or ability that somebody can have. So kudos to your father.
yeah, I think it's a real important lesson because I was kind of insular as a younger person,
Mhm.
kind of a nerd, and then I didn't really understand how my dad could do that.
Right.
As I got older, I'm in my 50s now. I was like, wow, I totally get how he did it.
Right. Right.
and
I have a credo when I talk to about having the three P's. And the three P's I think are the most important letters of your life. The first is being positive, being a positive person, always looking at the glass half full. Posture. It's not just literal posture, but figurative posture. Do you stand up straight? Do you have confidence in yourself? Because if you have confidence in yourself, people will want to get to know you. They'll believe you. And the third is positioning. How do you position yourself in life? What is it that you can do to help the other person? So if you have those three things in life, you will succeed.
yeah, I think it's important to be able to have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a vision for your life and you don't get put on into like just phoning it in.
Right.
Because a lot of people get, they end up saying, well, the world's like, not allowing me to do this. And it's like, you know what? Like you're creating the glass ceiling.
Right.
Like the world is here
Right.
and you're in it.
Right.
And today you could change your frame of mind
Mm-hmm.
and you could have an epiphany.
Right.
And suddenly what was black is white and what's in the middle is gray. And like now you don't know. So now let's find out.
You create your own world. So the people that are going through hard times, they're creating that. But people that are positive, that always look at the glasses half full, that position themselves in a way that can help other people, you're also creating your own world. And that's the world I choose to live in.
Yeah, I think the connection's real important when people get into like individualism to an nth degree.
Right.
And it's really if you can think of the world, your community, and actually, like you said, smile at people,
Mm-hmm.
to actually interact with people, like ask people how they're doing,
Right.
Not just tell them about you.
Right.
Open up to actually finding out, like, well, how's your neighbor doing? Have you actually done anything other than wave at them?
Mm-hmm.
If you actually gone over and asked them what's actually going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we're in the Northeast, like sometimes it's a rare thing. It's like you live in a neighborhood and nobody even asks, the fifth house down, what's been going on?
Right.
I have
That's right.
no idea. They have
Right.
no idea. Nobody's talking.
we have a lot of couple friends, and a couple of the women are particularly good dressers. They look great, and I always make a comment about their shoes, and they have such a sense of connection with me because it's important to them how they look, and I know that's obvious, is important to them. And I compliment them on that. And I really am. And I grew up my daughter is in fashion. My mother's always been so it is something that's important to me. But when you know that something's important to that person and it really resonates with you, compliment them. Let them know that, you know what, I know how you look is important and you look great. And they're not superficial. It's just it could be a casual dress. It could be a look. It doesn't matter. But if you know something's important to somebody, then let them know that you think they're doing a good job in that area.
Yeah, I think it's important, like for you to have like situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you go do your keynote speech,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going off your planned speech, and it's not kicking, it's not
Right.
hitting.
Right.
You just don't stay on it. You have to make an adjustment.
Right.
But if you stay on it and say, "Well, I bombed,"
Yeah.
but it's kind of like that comedian. He's like they quickly pivot to something was bombing, then boom, to go to the next thing until they figure out the act that works.
What's hitting? Exactly
Yeah,
right.
they try it over time, and then their act evolves and becomes like the Carlin, or the Richard Pryor show. He's like, well, that was built over time by
Right.
trial and error.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
But in normal conversation, the one thing that I can always fall back on, is talking about them, bringing it back to them. People always love talking about themselves. They love talking about their work, about their kids, about whatever it is. And even when things aren't so good, they still like to talk about themselves. So when you really want to engage with somebody, and I used to do this I remember one time buying a company, and we got very involved, and I wanted to get it out of the work setting. So we went out for a drink. We didn't talk about work for more than 5 minutes. We were together for 2 hours. We talked about work for 5 minutes. We talked about sports. We talked about college. We talked about other people we dated. We talked about where we lived. That was the connection that made that deal happen. We didn't talk about work. He wanted to know me as a person, and I wanted to know him as a person. So it doesn't always have to be centered on what the subject is. Get to know that person as a person. It opens up the world.
Yeah, I like to ask people like, what's their favorite, author? What's their favorite band? What's their favorite music?
Or where do you like to travel to?
Yeah. Where do you like to go? What do you like to do? What's your hobby? And once you get into that, then you really start to, see the interconnections. I'm a mountain biker.
You've torn down the walls.
Yeah, and then you find out somebody's into mountain biking, and then you can dive into that for hours. Mountain bikers are like hikers. Anybody that's out in the woods, they would go on and on about the war stories.
Right.
Well, I broke my collarbone. I broke did this, I did that, and tackled my wheel.
Right.
It's like the war story. Yeah.
Right. That's it. You got it. That's exactly. People need to understand that. They need to understand how important connection and breaking down those walls are.
Yeah, I think that's super important because some people just want to go right to the heart of what they, they just want to. I don't want to skip to the point, but it's like that does not always work.
Right. And I have to tell you something. I'm guilty of that sometimes. My wife, I hear she runs a chapter of something called YPO here in Los Angeles. And she is absolutely the best listener I wouldn't have patience because a lot of these people, I need to get down to brass tacks at some point. She could talk for a half an hour before she gets down to what she needs to. And I learn from her. I listen to her. I say, gosh, how do you have the patience to do that? But she does. And she's so good at it.
That's a hard thing. Cause like a lot of times it's like burning.
Right.
And you're like you want to get it out. You want to kind of blurt it out. It's like, but it's not going to work. It's like, cause it's like probably not at the right point in the conversation.
That's right.
When you blurt it out and then it's going to like be uncomfortable and it's not going to fit. It's like, well, you kind of missed the moment.
Right. That's right.
But scaling business, like with the getting, the people to like ramp up today in the market, it would seem like because of all the tech, it's easy to do that. But is it also part of people's like mindset in terms like if they don't have a mindset that they can scale, even though they're tools, they might be restricting themselves, right?
Absolutely. People, pivoting is part of life. And people have to realize that. I know years ago, I worked at a radio rep firm, and it was very much the same thing. And then when satellite radio came in and digital came in and all these different things came in, some of them just refused to pivot. And if you are putting a wall up saying, no, this is what I do, and if it's changing, I don't care. I don't want to have anything to do with it. You're going to be left behind. So you have to kind of have an understanding of what's next. One of my good qualities, I have a lot of bad qualities, but one of my good is my curiosity. And I'm always interested in what is next, what's coming next. How is my business going to be affected by this 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? And I want to learn, and I want to bring in people that can help me direct. Okay, Bill, this is where this business is going. This is where you're going. And so if you're not willing to learn and you're not willing to pivot, you will be left behind.
Yeah, it's like the AI revolution, in IT. And a lot of times, like, we still have to look at it as a business analyst. Like, we always look at business cases, use cases. And some people just want to say, oh, it's AI is a new sexy thing. And they want to throw it into everything.
Right.
But there's certain cases where it doesn't really work,
Right.
and there's certain cases where it does work.
Yep.
If you get people that's trying to sell you something and it's not appropriate, then you got to start this is it past the smell test,
Hmm.
because it's like just because it's the new hot thing, it's the new
Right.
buzzword, everyone wants to throw it in something without actually, is it actually giving you a benefit,
Right.
right? Is it the right case? Is it the right use of the tech?
Yeah.
And
Let me give
and
you a
that's
great example. Let me give you a great example of something. I had a marketing company I worked with for about 2 years. And when AI started to really take effect, ChatGPT, all these different things, he knew he was going to have to, he could let a lot of his staff go. So he was evaluating who was going to go. One of the people he had working for him decided, you know what? I'm not going to fight this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to learn how to be an expert in ChatGPT and in
Mhm.
AI. He was one of the 3 people that the guy kept,
Yep.
because he taught him. He didn't just catch him fish. He taught him how to fish.
Yeah.
So this guy was a keeper. So he was thinking 3 steps ahead of everybody else. I'm not going to fight this. I'm not going to say I can write better than GPT. I'm not going to say I can do better than AI. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to harness GPT. I'm going to harness AI. I'm going to learn how to use it to help our company the most. That
Yeah.
was a perfect example of somebody that took advantage of the pivot and said, this is how I'm going to fill my niche.
Because there's a lot of people like in my industry, I work with a lot of insurance companies, right? If you take a veteran technologist, right, doesn't know anything about ChatGPT, but they know the business. If you teach them about prompt engineering,
Mhm.
if you teach them about how you can automate workflows and how you can integrate multiple tools
Right.
using AI engines, that you could go and create all kinds of workflow automation opportunities.
Right.
It's not just the prompt engineering, there's the automation opportunities you can do.
Mhm.
They're really smart. Then that person is valuable because they actually know the business.
Right.
And so then instead of this saying we're going to throw these business people away, if they actually go and learn, they become like the person you said, they become invaluable because if they
Mhm.
actually know the business and then they learn that
Right.
AI on top of it,
Right.
then you're unstoppable. That's where people have to stop fearing the new tech, whatever the new
Right.
tech is in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Right.
You got to learn to embrace it and say, I can take that, all my breadth of knowledge,
Mhm.
and actually use it
Right.
and add to it.
And the
That's
thing you like about that person is that, not only did they take that next step and thought ahead, but they're the kind of person that knows how to pivot. They're the kind of person that looks 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the line. Those are the people I want working for me.
yeah. I mean that's where people will find the new thing.
Right.
The people who were working on a horse and buggy and realized
Right.
they could transfer to working on automobiles, and they
Right.
took the effort to take. Well, I know how to put these wheels on these carriages.
Right.
I'll learn how to put the wheels on the cars.
Right.
I'll learn how to fix the radio. I'll learn how to do it. So it's like they what didn't have that skill set, but they ramped up to it. So
Hmm.
we've had technological revolutions where people ramped up to the new tech,
Right.
and there actually were more jobs
Hmm.
because there's a lot of things that people don't get into under the covers. There's a lot of stuff you can get into
Right.
if you embrace it instead of fearing it. And
Yeah.
fear, is all about safety. I think everybody wants to just be safe.
Hmm.
And so they hold on to things they think make them safe. It's like the wolves at the door, which I
Right.
always talk about.
I remember when we were developing our software for Like Live, my one of the guys that worked for us always, whenever he presented a solution to something, he always said, "Okay, this is going to work tomorrow, but here's an idea that will work for the next 5 years. It costs a little bit more. It will take a little longer to develop, but this is more." And I loved when he had those solutions. I
Mhm.
said, if it's an extra 50,000 or 25, whatever it is, I don't care. If you think that this is going to be what's next, where people are going, what's going to be scalable for the next 5 years, let's go for it. And I love that he was always thinking ahead. I don't want to just invent or fix what's going to be fixed tomorrow. I want to know what's going to be working for the next several years. And I love people like that. Here's
Yeah,
what will
people who
work over
work
the long
on
term.
like structural changes that's not band-aids,
Right.
because like sometimes the structure needs to shift. And we
Hmm.
call it like a structural change versus just a value change at a table.
Right.
Structural change is totally changing the table.
Right.
Adding
Right.
columns to the table, it's a whole new table
Hmm.
where like just a band-aid is just changing a value in the cell on the table.
Right. That's
Right.
exactly right. And my question to him was always, it was always the same. He laughed at it after a while. Is it easier? Is it going to be easier for the customer? Is it going to be easy for the customer to use? And we always joked, because I ended every conversation that way. It was the most important thing to me that it was going to be easy for the customer
Mhm.
to use. Because the easier it was, the more adaptability we had, the more people we had that used our product. So that was always my niche in all of my businesses. Is it easier for our customer to use?
Yeah, it's like the user experience is so important. We have a lot of people that analyze that now.
Right.
And it used to be like with techies would build stuff and then they would say, well, that's the way it's supposed to work because it's
Right.
coming from the programmer's perspective. And, he's an engineer, but he's not very good at being a CRM.
Right.
Right. So the CRM people get this thing. It's like, you got to make me go through 10 screens and then do this and do that and just to get to this.
That's right.
When somebody said, well, why can't you just do it in like 2 steps?
Mhm.
Right. And then, oh, whoa, didn't think about that. Right.
Right.
So it's like that's where we are today. It's like now we're not having people just build it to be 10 screens because
Mhm.
that's what they think it should be. We actually listen to a business person who says, I need to be able to move faster than that.
Right.
I need
Yeah.
to be able to get to this easier than that.
And I didn't care when they say, we had a lot of our IT guys say, well, this is the way it should be. I said, I don't care that that's the way it should be. I care about that taking our customer, he's getting frustrated because it's taking him, as you said, 10 steps to do it instead of 2 steps to do it.
Yeah.
I want this done in 2 steps.
Yeah.
And they would go back and they would take a little longer, but we'd figure out a way. I want this done in 2 steps. I don't want to lose customers in going from step to step to step.
Well, you introduce a lot of volatility.
Yeah.
Like what in the old stage of IT from the 70s and 80s and 90s, you've got like errors happening because the things are so laborious.
Mm-hmm.
So you got all this bad data because you're making people go through these hoops.
Right.
And so they get tired, they make mistakes, or it's too laborious and they can't stay focused. So if you make something that's like less error prone,
Right.
because it's less prone to user error, it's less prone to user getting bored and making easy mistakes because you make them do too many things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's more things you do, the more chances you're gonna make a mistake.
That there's never been a truer statement. You're absolutely right, and I always tell people the same with when I'm teaching. The more you give people to remember, the less they will.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll end my sessions with 3 points, 3 bullet points. Okay, we've talked for an hour, we've talked for 2 hours. These are the 3 things I want you to remember. Whatever else you remember is gravy. These are the 3 things I want you to. So that's what we do, and I make it simple, make it easy, make it memorable.
Yeah, the top 3, top 5, top 10.
Right.
Like you run into a meeting and somebody's got top 30.
Yeah.
After a meeting that was an hour and it went 3 hours,
Right.
no one's going to remember the 30 at all.
Nobody.
If you had just done the top 5,
right,
you'd be more productive.
Right.
And I always kind of learned is like keep it down to the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you got to go to 10, but try to keep it to 5 and don't do an hour meeting and make it go 2-3 hours.
That's right. That's right.
Like, don't do that because then you're wasting people's time because guess what? People are zoning out at, hour and 5 minutes. Once you hit past the hour, like most of the people are not there.
Right. Yeah, I have a big speech I'm giving on Friday to a USC graduate school, and they want me to use a whole hour, which I'll use. A lot of it's question and answer, but I'm going to end it with 3 bullet points that I want them to remember. And it's all based on the audience that I'm talking to. I have different bullet points, but it's so important to say when they walk out, because they're not going to remember more than 3 things. And I want these are the 3 things that will encourage them to either reach out to me to talk to me more, or they can implement those easy and simply into whatever it is they're doing.
I think that's a really good place to like kind of end the conversation for tonight. But I think being concise and getting to the point,
right?
Because if people come out of something and they don't know what they were supposed to get out of it, then you fail.
That's
like
right.
if you can you've got to have a goal. Like when you're doing some kind of connection or speech or communication with people, if their goal, and when you ask them later, if they can't tell you the 3 things, then you didn't communicate it.
That's exactly right. As far as I'm concerned, I failed. If I can't give them 3 bullet points to remember, then I failed. It's on me.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing to get out of this conversation today is like really get people to brass tacks is like what's the goal,
Right.
you know. And I think like you've got given a lot of information, a lot of nuggets, the golden nuggets that I think people can take away from this conversation.
Good.
I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Like a Ghost podcast. We've been on live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. We got the smartermindsnetwork.com below. That's fully clickable in the podcast description. And if people click on that, what do they find there?
They'll find all about my book. They'll find out about my consultancy, and they'll go to all of our social media. They'll really, it's the complete story.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for being on the show tonight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good being with you.
Thank you.